Welcome, Bengals Nation. Welcome to Dey Weekly with your host, Tim Lyons from Running Through the Jungle. This will be a weekly show. I'll do a quick recap from every Bengals game. And for you fantasy football nuts, I will go over the top 5 fantasy point getters for each position of the week. Now let's start with the bad news for us Bengals fans. Bengals had a tough start to the season, losing to the New England Patriots 16-10 in their opener. The game was marked by several mistakes from the Bengals, including turnovers and missed tackles. Joe Burrow and the offense struggled to gain momentum against the Patriots defense. Patriots effectively containing the Bengals' efforts. Stevenson was a standout for the Patriots, rushing for over 100 yards and scoring a touchdown. This game also marks Mayo's first win as the Patriots head coach. Next up for the Bengals, the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead. Now don't forget to like and subscribe and share us with your friends. If you want to hear our reactions to the games, go watch or listen to the Roaring Reactions on Facebook or listen on all your podcast platforms weekly. Also, come check out Running Through the Jungle on Wednesdays for our predictions. Then catch Running Through the Jungle's Strange Love crossover with our opponents from that week and see what they have to say about the Bengals and their team. Now to the top 5 scoring leaders for the week. Starting off with the quarterbacks, we will start with Josh Allen as number 1. 232 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 39 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and he had a lost fumble. He had a total points of 31.18 points. Number 2 was Baker Mayfield versus Washington. He had 289 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and 21 rushing yards, with a total of 29.66 points. Then the rookie, Jaden Daniels versus Tampa Bay from the Washington Commanders as well. 184 passing yards, 88 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns for 28.16 points. Then Anthony Richardson from the Indianapolis Colts, 212 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 56 rushing yards, and 1 touchdown, totaling 26.08 points. And coming in at number 5, your returning MVP, Lamar Jackson, versus Kansas City, had 273 passing yards, 1 touchdown. He also ran for 122 yards, and he had 1 fumble loss. Now to the real bell cows of the NFL and of football, the running backs. Number 1 overall for all of offense for the fantasy week, Saquon Barkley versus Green Bay. 109 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 receptions for 23 yards and 1 touchdown, totaling 33.20 points. At number 2, Cincinnati's no longer Joe Mixon versus the Indianapolis Colts. Rushed for 159 yards and 1 touchdown. He had 3 receptions for 19 yards, totaling 26.80 points. Devon Achane came in third for Miami versus Jacksonville, had 24 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. And then he had 7 receptions for 76 yards, totaling 23 points. Number 4, J.K. Dobbins. He's had a tough career. He's been injured a lot of that time during his career. Now he plays for the Los Angeles Chargers. Versus the Las Vegas Raiders, he ran for 135 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 receptions for 4 yards, but still had 22.90 points. And then at number 5, Jordan Mason comes off the bench. CMC's injured, playing against the New York Jets on Monday Night Football for the San Francisco 49ers. He had 147 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 reception for 5 yards, totaling 22.20 points. Now to the wide receivers. At number 1, Jaden Reed, Green Bay wide receiver, versus the Philadelphia Eagles, and he was number 2 in overall points. He had 33 rushing yards with 1 touchdown. He had 4 receptions for 138 yards and 1 touchdown, and had 33.10 points. Number 2, Cooper Kupp. Welcome back, Cooper, versus Detroit Lions. He had 10 rushing yards, 14 receptions, 110 yards, and 1 touchdown, totaling 32 points. Alan Lazard, Aaron Rodgers' teammate from Green Bay, now on the New York Giants, versus San Francisco, had 6 receptions for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns, totaling 26.90 points. Tyreek Hill comes in at number 4 versus Jacksonville, 7 receptions, 130 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown for 26 points. And Jameson Williams, who I said was a sneaky pick, and I think he's going to have a great year for the Detroit Lions versus the Los Angeles Rams, had 13 rushing yards, 5 receptions, 121 yards, and 1 touchdown for 24.4 points. Now to the tight ends, and I'm only going to say there's only one exciting good tight end on this for this week was Isaiah Likely. Unfortunately, him and the Ravens lost against Kansas City by a toe. He had 9 receptions, 111 yards, and 1 touchdown for 26.10 points. And then Foster Moreau for New Orleans Saints comes in at second versus Carolina, 4 receptions, 43 yards, 1 touchdown for 14.30. Brock Bowers, rookie from Georgia, stolen from the Cincinnati Bengals for the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Los Angeles Chargers, had 6 receptions, 58 yards, no touchdowns, but he still had 11.80 points. Kyle Pitts comes in at number 4 for Atlanta versus Pittsburgh, 3 receptions, 26 yards, and 1 touchdown, 11.60 points. And then number 5, Juwan Johnson for New Orleans versus Carolina, had 2 receptions, 26 yards, 1 touchdown, and a 10.60 points. Now to the kickers, and the kickers put up on a lot of points this weekend. Starting with Chris Boswell from Pittsburgh versus Atlanta. He had 24 points because he had 6 field goals. 3 of them were 50-plus yarders. And number 2, Jake Moody for the 49ers versus the New York Jets, had 2 points after the touchdown, PATs. And then he had 6 field goals, 2 from 50-plus for 24 points as well. Then there was Blake Group at New Orleans, coming in at number 3 versus Carolina. He had 5 PATs, and he had 4 field goals, 2 50-plus yarders for 21 points. Brandon Aubrey for Dallas versus Cleveland had 3 PATs and 4 field goals, 2 at 50-plus for 19 points. And then coming in the rear at number 5, Fairbairn from the Houston Texans versus in the Indianapolis Colts, had 2 PATs and 3 50-plus yarders field goals for 17 points. Now to wrap it up, the defense at number 1, the Chicago Bears versus Tennessee, had 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, 1 fumble, 2 defensive touchdowns, and only allowed 17 points, totaling 22 points for the week. Minnesota Vikings at number 2 versus the New York Giants had 5 sacks, 2 interceptions, and scored a defensive touchdown, only allowing 6 points versus the New York Giants for 22 points. For fantasy points, excuse me, if I confuse anybody. Dallas Cowboys defense versus Cleveland had 6 sacks, 2 interceptions, and looks like a return for a touchdown, and only allowed 17 points. I believe that was a punt return for a touchdown. It wasn't a kickoff return. I think it was a punt return for a touchdown. It only allowed 17 points, and they had 17 total points for the week. Number 4, the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Las Vegas Raiders, had 4 sacks, 1 interception, 2 fumble recoveries, and only allowed 10 points for 14 total points for fantasy football. And at number 5, the New Orleans Saints versus Carolina. They had 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, a forced fumble recovery, a fumble recovery, and only allowed 10 points for the week, giving them 14 total fantasy points. Now, for my 5. I'm so sorry. 1 second. I just lost. There we go. Technical difficulties. Going to happen. There we go. So for my top 5 waiver wire pickups. I have 5 of them. You know, I wasn't sure how to really give you more fantasy stuff, but I'm going to give you a little bit more here. Jordan Mason, I would definitely pick him up. He's going to be a sneaky if CMC doesn't play again next week, but versus Minnesota. Then I would do Tank Bigsby, the running back out of Jacksonville, versus the Cleveland Browns next week. He could get some. Cleveland has a hard time stopping the run. Then there's Baker Mayfield versus Detroit and Bucky Irving versus Detroit. Both of them are playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I would definitely pick those two guys up. I think they're going to have a solid game. It's going to give you some good points. And you know, Baker Mayfield, he's a great waiver wire pickup for you guys. You know, look what he did last week. And then my number 5 pickup would be Isaiah Likely versus the Raiders. And I would definitely pick up Isaiah Likely. You know, the way that Baltimore is using Likely and Andrews, I think Likely's going to see a little bit more action this year versus Andrews for some. I think Andrews is going to be more of a blocking tight end back, maybe go out for some receptions, but I think they're going to start leaning towards Likely a little bit more. But that wraps up my Dey Weekly. And I appreciate everybody viewing, watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And thank you again. Appreciate it. Have a great night. Dey.